acá junto a nosotros Marcus Tingles, que es, para decirlo en castellano, jefe de innovación global de Deloitte, y también ahora nos acompaña Roberto Mizrahi, un inversionista ángel. Muchas gracias por estar con nosotros. Y me gustaría un poco que todos participáramos acá. Si bien yo soy presentador de un programa económico y todos los viernes hacemos programas de emprendimiento, sin duda que las mayores interrogantes, las cosas que todos quieren saber, las tienen ustedes, porque me imagino que acá hay emprendedores, hay gente que tiene una buena idea, pero que quizás no sabe o no le han dicho o no tiene quizás conocimiento suficiente para dar el paso adelante, que es lógicamente tener el financiamiento para llevar a cabo esa buena idea. Por lo tanto, los invito a que levanten la mano si quieren hacer alguna pregunta, si quieren hacer una pregunta por Twitter con el hashtag Meetlatam, lo hagan libremente, porque acá la idea es que resolvamos las dudas, no solamente las que pueda plantear yo, sino que lógicamente las que tengan todos ustedes. Pero quisiera partir un poco nivelando la cancha y creo que es algo bastante crucial. Todos estamos de acuerdo en que lo primero es tener una buena idea, creer que puede ser un excelente negocio. Pero llegado el momento de concebir esa idea, ¿cuál es, a su juicio, el siguiente paso? Lo primero que hay que hacer para pensar en ir donde un inversionista ángel, donde un venture capitalist. ¿Cuál es, a su juicio, y les dejo abierta la palabra, qué es lo primero que hay que hacer? Desarrollar un plan de negocios, ir a hablar con alguien que sepa de negocio y que me ayude. ¿Cuál es, a su juicio, lo primero que hay que hacer después de tener la buena idea? Libertad absoluta. Absolute freedom.
Can I change the question a little?
Okay. Absolute freedom.
So I think, so your notion was that what is the first thing you do before you go talk to an angel investor or VC? And in all consideration to my angel investor VC friends, I don't think that's your only option. I think if you're an entrepreneur and you have an idea, you have three good options. One is the VC and angel community, right? One is to start using some Kickstarter type of raising investment. I think you can develop a business plan and you can put that idea out on a Kickstarter. We just saw Facebook purchase Oculus Rift a few weeks ago for $2 billion. Who's familiar with that? What Facebook's bought Oculus Rift for $2 billion. You know where Oculus Rift started? On Kickstarter by a 19-year-old 16 months prior to that. Right? So there's ways to raise money other than just solely through VC and angel investors. The other thing I want to bring up to everyone's attention is I deal with corporate executives of the largest companies in the world. They want to meet you. They want to meet you. They realize that big software companies don't have a monopoly on the technology that they use in their business anymore. Used to. Big technology companies do not have a monopoly on the software that they use to run their business, nor do they have in their companies the smartest people in the world. They realize the smartest people in the world are out here. So what I've been noticing in the last 12 to 18 months is big companies, Fortune 500 companies. These are companies that are $100 billion companies, $50 billion companies, $10 billion companies. They want to meet you. We're actually doing tours where we bring corporate executives of some of the biggest companies out to Silicon Valley or out to these startup communities. I'm bringing a delegation of executives to Tel Aviv next month in Israel to meet directly with you to talk about your ideas and your business plans. What you have to start to learn is how to be a consultant, not just an entrepreneur. You have to think about your own business strategy, your own business plan, and what the return on investment is for the company versus just the VC. You can go directly to a large consumer product company, a large retailer, a large bank. You're the audience for them now. So you can go to them and share your ideas and go directly to get funding for those ideas. I'm a consultant at Deloitte. Before I was at Deloitte as a partner, I had my own business for 7 years. What I did was I came up with ideas, I built a business plan, and I didn't go to a VC or angel investor. I went right to the company and said, I have an idea for you. I have a whole business plan. I will be contractor, I'll be a subcontractor, I'll be a consultant to you, and I'll bring this idea to life. So I think you have a lot of options when it comes to investing, not just VCs and angel investors.
Yeah, I think there used to be a time when you could just have an idea and develop a business plan and then go directly to investors and pitch them and raise a bunch of money to do your business. But That's not how the world works anymore.
It's old-fashioned? Old-fashioned?
It's, you know, you can start a business, you can create a company on so many fewer resources than you could in the past, that investors, at least in the United States, expect that you've already done the extra work of actually, you know, developing the idea and the product and getting it out there into customers' hands and actually starting to build the business before they'll even consider investing. So you have to take the idea much further today to be able to raise investment than you did in the past, just because you know, you can, and it takes so many fewer resources that now that's expected that you'll have done that extra work. So,
yeah, I think what everyone's talking about, Andrew and Marcus, is really about imputed credibility. Because as you approach an investor, what you're really trying to do is get them convinced that what you are doing is real and or possible. And if you look at you know, a case of like a Mark Zuckerberg or our firm, we seeded Twitter. Twitter was, the first iteration of Twitter was built in 7 days by Jack Dorsey, just kind of, you know, coding out. It wasn't an incredibly complex product, of course, but I think Andrew was basically saying you can do it now.
Facebook was built in like 10 days, the first version as well. So
yeah, so I think it's about how do you get people to understand your vision. Oculus Rift is another version of that. Now that's a little more complicated because it's a hardware product, but they were able to impute credibility in the vision by actually building it. And so I think in the absence of that, if it's the old school kind of company, now if you're going to go do something like, you know, build a router or semiconductor chip, it does take a business plan and $100 million. So that's about imputed credibility of people.
So here we are down in the South where we have built, basically SecureWorks was a power plant. I had to build a utility company to service one network. I had to service 1,000 networks. And we're down in the South, and this is where Cooking.com and Fig Leaf was taken off. So could you imagine, like you said, it was a chip concept. The best thing we did, because I couldn't build it to show why I needed funding, I actually got into my retirement fund, and we went to Wind River, and we built a prototype. So when I went to investors, I actually put the box on the table. Completely of foam, could open it up, see all the channels, all the metrics in which the chips would go into, and once an investor could touch it and feel it, they're in. It wasn't even built yet.
yeah, I mean, with rapid prototyping and what's happening, it's become, even in hardware, you can start to prototype concepts and build things, you know, with very little resources. So, you know, the bar is constantly going up, I think, in terms of, you know, how much you're expected to have before you approach investors.
Going back to your original question, in my case...
It works for me.
Going back to why you invest on the team, more if you have a business model, you have an idea. It's okay, so you have a clear idea, you know the market, there is a market, but the business model itself, for me, it's not an important, especially at an angel stage, because odds are you're going to fail. And we have to understand that, and we have to live with it, and we need to be able to surpass that. If you have that idea, and you can surpass that, and you know your business model is going to change many, many times, but you're focused, and you have a product that you want to build, that's, for me, that's one of the reasons why I would invest on the team more than if the project is going to generate revenue. At angel investment, I'm expecting revenue at least in 18 more months. So it's not right off. So, you know, I'm taking a risk, and it's good. We love to. It's how we build an ecosystem. That's how we want to create this.
And as an angel investor in Chile, it must be interesting for you, because what we're seeing is two types of angel investors. There's ones that want to write you a check, and then they want to know when's Charles River getting involved and how soon, which is not the ideal angel investor, versus an angel investor who writes a check and says, okay, go see if it even, you can prototype it. I mean, just baby steps along the way.
For me, it's more like, let's hope that you do not have to raise a lot more capital, because the more capital you raise, the more you get diluted. Try to build a consistent business that will survive on itself. Try to grow more. Keep being an entrepreneur. Don't become an employee of your own company. But if you have to raise capital, you know, you have to celebrate all the stages. Going to a Series A, it's an amazing step as an entrepreneur. And if you need to go there and you make it, and you have another VC also believing in you, you have to celebrate it. It's an amazing experience when you're an entrepreneur and you reach that level, and then you keep growing and growing your business. But always trying to keep a sustainable business. And if you have to raise capital, that's because you want to go bigger and, you know, go all out.
Which, can I jump in on a quick question? As an angel investor, we've seen in the last 5 years, you used to go in and you would take everything from that angel. I mean, like, oh, you got 300, I'll take 300. But then when the next round would come up, and you got an A round, these guys, okay, we're good for 3 to 5 million. Who wants to do the pro rata? I could tell you, well, I want to do my pro rata, but I can't because I've already spent all my money. I found that, do you really believe me, or do you think I don't believe in the product? Because you're like, I saw what you sold SecureWorks for. What do you mean you don't have another 200,000-300,000? Do you believe me, or do you think?
You know, I often run into entrepreneurs that have hit it, and they're out to raise money. And I'll give you a perfect example. There's a gentleman I backed very recently. He was the founding VP of engineering of WebEx.
Oh, yeah.
He took it through the IPO, sold it for $3.4 billion in cash with his team to Cisco, stayed there for another 6 years and built it to an $800 million business. And he left to start a company. And he called me and he said, hey, Bill, I'd love you to be my first investor. And clearly the first thought that went into my head, you've made a couple $100 million. Why do you need me? But before I could answer that question, he said, you know you know that I don't need the money, but I'd love your help. You're fun to work with. And so I think one, you want to appeal to their ego a little bit, but I think the other part of it is that I always tell the folks that I fund, you're going to raise X dollars. You don't want it to be a pure party round where there's nobody significantly committed. But if you can get more people cheering for you for the same amount of money, rather than like one institutional investor that has limited reach, if you could get 10 really influential people that give you imputed credibility, you're better off. And he went on to raise money from people that knew the space, and it gave him a lot more oomph in the market when he launched his product.
Bueno, ya están funcionando bien las redes sociales porque hay gente que está preguntando a través de hashtag Meetlatam. De hecho, Climb Up Market pregunta, porque ya quedó bastante claro que lo primero antes de ir a hablar con un inversionista es ir a probar en el mercado, ver si nuestra idea tiene por lo menos en una primera instancia un funcionamiento y es algo que se puede desarrollar en un esquema de negocio más adelante. De hecho, ¿cuál es la pregunta exacta? ¿Cuál es el factor más determinante en el que un inversionista se fija? ¿En el equipo que hay detrás de un posible negocio? ¿En la idea? ¿Los retornos? ¿El plan de negocios a futuro? ¿Cuál es, en definitiva, lo que un inversionista ve y dice, esta es una excelente idea, apuesto por ella?
Yes, it's all of those things. I mean, I think that you could talk about, what's the most important factor. I think each of those things needs to be there. I think many investors will tell you that team is the most important just because it's one of the hardest to change. I mean, if a product isn't working, you can always move in different directions or tweak it or do something different. But if the core team is not functioning well, then you have serious issues. And so, I think it is team most importantly, but it's a combination of all those things together, and it's different for every investment.
I agree with it. It's got to be a mix of everything. You have priorities. Team's number one for me, idea, disruptive, but it's not just one thing. I don't know how you can put it.
I agree to some extent. I think now things are definitely changing. When I entered the business, my first one of the investors in the first company I was in as a startup was Don Valentine, and now his views are a little bit maybe old school today relative to where things are. But he used to say that the only thing you have to get right is the market, and the team is completely replaceable. And so his idea would be, be in the right space, and you swapped people in and out like a commodity until the thing worked. Now that, I think, kind of works in certain industries where the change is glacial, and you are working on $50 million builds of, in a technology space like communications. When you went from 10 megabit Ethernet to 100 megabit Ethernet to gigabit Ethernet, you knew what was coming. So yes, you could say you're going to do that, and you swap people in and out. Now we are in a different environment where I think team takes precedence. But one of the things that I think was true in those days when I kind of learned the business from him, he said to me, you can have the best team in the world and infinite capital, and if you pick the wrong market and stay there, you'll get a zero every time. So it's really, I think, important to have a big market that's going through structural change that is timed well. And if you can catch a wave, you can sometimes have companies that are misfiring on every cylinder for years. And I'm not going to say that Twitter did exactly that, but there was a period of time when Twitter was kind of a shaky enterprise, but the wave carried them. And it wasn't that they were bad people. I think some of the choices they made on the technology early on were not scalable, but they survived because the wave carried them. So I think it is everything. And the question is, if you're in the wrong market, do you have the right people, like you said, keep the team together and pivot?
Yeah, I was just going to add on that too. It's ideas are in abundance, so there's more than enough good ideas to go around. What you don't see when you have startups and entrepreneurs come to you is if they have the ability to execute. Even if the execution means that some of the resources are going to get supplemented by the VC or they're going to be managed by new resources, you're going to swap in new resources. But you have to show leadership. So you see two types of entrepreneurs that come for funding. Those that have, well, all of them have a quote-unquote good idea, some better than others. But you get to a point where okay, I'm up to the good ideas now, but how I'm going to delineate between investing in you versus another is, do I think you're a good leader? Do I think you have passion in what you're doing? And do I think you actually know how to execute? Because the ideas are easy, the execution's hard.
Antes de pasar a una siguiente pregunta de Twitter o al público, así que si las personas, alguno de ustedes tiene alguna pregunta, levante la mano y por supuesto que van a tener la oportunidad de hacerla. Ustedes hablaron de formar equipos, la importancia. Quisiera preguntarles, en un principio, ¿es bueno rodearse de gente cercana en quien uno pueda confiar o de inmediato quizás elegir personas que alguna vez uno conoció, pero que uno diga, yo creo que esta es la persona correcta? ¿Cómo en una primera instancia, el armar equipos, cómo lo ven ustedes?
So, we've used the word ecosystem a lot here. One of the things that we've done with Singularity University at NASA in Silicon Valley is we created, it launched 2 months ago, it's called the Corporate Innovation Exchange Program. And it's public information, so I can share this, but Coca-Cola, Hershey's, Lowe's Home Improvement, it's a home improvement retailer in the U.S., and UNICEF are all founding members in the Corporate Innovation Exchange. What they're doing is, to the team question is, they're locating physically their people out at NASA Research Ames Park at Singularity University's campus. And then we bring to them all the startups. Some people that have no funding yet. And that was my whole point, is that big businesses are starting to realize that the smartest people in the world don't work in their companies. They're out there somewhere. So the Corporate Innovation Exchange, so Deloitte is a big player in what we're doing there, is there's an appetite out there. Fortune 500 companies finally want to get into the game, and start doing what others are doing as far as leveraging this entrepreneurial renaissance that's going on. So I would suggest that here in Santiago that you start working with institutions here, governments. It might be the IF with Alejandra, what she's doing. I would start to create an environment here where you can take corporations that are based here and link them up and have them start networking and building an ecosystem with the entrepreneurial community and the VCs and so forth. But I think the teams will come organically through that interaction.
Well, if I understood the question correctly, it was also a little bit about how you find co-founders and how you in the very beginning of a company, how you put that together. And I think starting a company with someone, with a co-founder is not that dissimilar from, getting married to someone, and that you're stuck with them for a long time and you're going to be interacting, on a very deeply personal level. That's the difference between a founder and an employee of a company, is that a founder is personally involved in the company, whereas an employee is just doing it as a job. And if you don't get along with those people, if you can't work with them without wanting to, get into fistfights or scream and yell and run out, you're going to have a very rough time, and it's probably not going to work. So you really have to connect on a personal level, and to do that, it does really help to be starting a company with someone who you know really well, and you already know that you can work with them, and
I think it was Warren Buffett that said, at this point, early in my life, I realized if I didn't know them when they were eating cereal at their mother's table, I would not partner with them. And it's true not because they're going to always agree with you, but it's that you trust them, not when you're getting along. You trust them when they're making a decision, and they're the CTO, and you're just the CEO. You make every day look different. They make every day look the same. It's when you don't get along that you trust them. We've had 20 bending points at SecureWorks because we were innovating technology way down in the stack. It was highly controversial. But every time my co-founder and CTO made a decision, I'm like, and I made decisions of people I hired he didn't like. All right, that's trust. That's your job. We've talked it out. We've had a huge fight about it, but if that's what you're going to do, I'll get back and support it. That's how you build the right team.
And I think fundamental to either of those choices and the ability to hire without asking questions of your other co-founders is really answering the question of what is the culture you've established. Mm-hmm. Because I think the thing that my advice to entrepreneurs, if you're building a company, the best companies in the world are not actually companies, they're cults. So if you think about what Microsoft was at its peak, it was a cult of personality. Google is the same. Facebook is becoming that. And I think if you can then have consistency because you know what the profile, the culture, the characteristics of the personality set that you draw, it's self-fulfilling. And then you get performance out of an operation where you don't have to micromanage so much because people kind of know what the value system is. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's, above all that, it's kind of like you pick the people that will form the personality, but largely based on trust, to form that initial personality of the company, and you go from there.
It's an interesting point, too, because companies that are successful with creating a cult, notice that those are all the newer generation of companies that are also trying to change the world, in going back to the discussion we had about social impact. Your traditional Fortune 500 companies aren't cults. They don't have that mentality or that chemistry. It's business, it's commercial, it's capital, right? The companies that do create a cult atmosphere are the ones that they want to change the world. Sure, they want to make money, but they want to change the world.
Maybe Apple's a cult.
Okay, Apple, sure. Coming from the guy from Facebook.
Right. Well, but I would say quickly is that the one thing I learned, and so did my co-founder, and you talk to founders, is you look back and realize the next thing I'm going to do when I start my new endeavor is I'm actually going to hire an HR guy. Because I would talk about what I wanted to do and what we were going after and why it was right. And people would get so contagious. You sneeze, they catch the cold. And then I'd bring them in, and people would go, yeah, they don't even know how to do what you're talking about. Really? Because they really agreed with me. And our lives just took off. And our third hire was, and he said, you know what, forget sales. We need to run HR here. It could qualify. Are you really a fit for the team? I know you're contagious by the founders, but can you really do the job?
I think when you're starting and you need to surround yourself by people you admire, by people you believe that will add value to your company, and you will be able to learn from them just the same way they're going to learn from you. And, just to be able to supply all the things that we lack, that you would lack. I mean, we don't know everything. You're probably very good at one idea or creating the idea, having the vision, maybe the commercial side, but you need to have somebody on the operational side who will be able to have the same push and have the same sense of ownership of the company. I think when you guys talk about cults and the new generations of companies, a difference between before, when you could be a very high executive employee, you were always an employee, very well paid. You had, like, I'm an ex-IBM, I love IBM, I have my IBM shirt all the time, but you were always an employee. When you have your own company, when you work at a startup, you have that sense of existing and creating something new, something from the beginning, that ownership part. Even if you have 0.5% as stock option or you have 80%, you're part of a team that created something that is amazing, and you turn into a cult. I think that's my view.
Quisiera recordarles que tenemos acá a inversionistas ángeles, a fundadores de empresas exitosísimas, y por eso les insisto, a quienes estén acá, quienes tengan alguna duda, quizás este es el momento para preguntarle a personas que tienen realmente experiencia en emprendimientos, que lo han transformado en negocio. Entonces, si alguno de ustedes acá tiene alguna inquietud, esté a punto de, miren, aquí tenemos varias empresas que tienen muy buenas ideas. A ver, si está por ahí el micrófono inalámbrico que está...
Acá tengo el micrófono, ¿puedo hacer una pregunta?
Sí, adelante por favor, después por acá porque aquí también tenemos varias manos levantadas.
Muchas gracias. Nosotros somos una red social y se llama Políglota. Y al momento de invertir, las redes sociales son un nicho bien particular, porque no es lo mismo que una empresa que entrega productos más tangibles. Mi pregunta es, cuando uno va a buscar inversionistas, obviamente le piden usuarios, piden crecimiento. Hay muchas redes sociales que han dado el salto de a escalar un modelo de negocio donde han tenido que sacrificar un poco quizás algunos usuarios, han tenido que quizás comenzar a tener un fee, en fin, ¿cuáles son ustedes las claves para saber cuándo dar ese paso? ¿Y cuáles son quizás los niveles en los cuales ustedes empezarían a invertir en una red social?
Well, there is someone with, I think, a little experience in social network, Andrew.
If I understand the question, it's a little bit about how early do you want to focus on making revenue, even if it's going to come at the cost of your growth.
That's it.
And that is a difficult. It's difficult to know the right answer to it, and it's different for every company. You really have to decide what kind of business you're trying to build. I mean, if you're a company like Facebook, Facebook's business is about creating a gigantic audience, which it could then sell advertising to. And, so obviously scale is the most important thing. Getting as many eyeballs as possible is the name of the game. But that's not, other companies and other businesses, even other social networks, might have different models. You might almost think of a dating website as a little bit like a social network in that it has a bunch of users that it's trying to connect, but obviously they want to charge their users a fee to sign up. And so it totally depends on what you're trying to achieve. And I think that, if you're trying to build a business that's based on advertising, it's really all about building audience. But if you're trying to build a business that's about providing a service to your users, then you probably want to start charging a fee sooner rather than later, so that you can prove to yourself that you're really providing something of value, and you're forcing yourself to make hard decisions and confront whether or not you're building something that people really love so much that they're going to actually, take out their credit card and pay for. And the sooner you force that question, a lot of times the better off you'll be, rather than creating a service for free when you don't really know if anyone really is that engaged by it.
Tenemos acá hartas manos levantadas. Ahí, ¿dónde está ¿alguien tiene el micrófono? Ahí, por favor.
I see. Just a question for the whole panel. Is there any trend among investors to choose different topics over others at the moment, or on deciding a topic, a subject, or an idea finally?
So I'll ask a question as well. So your question is, what are some trends that investors are looking towards?
Yes.
Yeah, so how many of you are entrepreneur that's starting a business? Raise your hand. How many are you doing a business based on some field or some space of social media, social networking? Okay, lots, quite a few. How many people are doing something around 3D printing? I see one hand. How many people are doing something around artificial intelligence? I see 2 or 3. How many people are doing something on synthetic biology? I don't see anybody. How many people are doing something with nanotechnology? Okay, artificial intelligence, robotics, 3D printing, synthetic biology, digital medicine. These are exponential technologies that are transforming the world we live in like we've never seen before in the next decade. We naturally gravitate towards social media and social space and advertising technology for startups. Why would you compete with everybody else? You can see just from the sample size here that there was like one person 2 people that are focused on 3D printing. This is an industrial revolution that's going to happen in the next decade. Go into that business if you're an entrepreneur. So yeah, there's not only trends, but pick your battle, win the war. Take the things that are really progressing exponentially, because they're very deceptive too. We already know social media is big. Why are you going to go to a place you know is big because everyone else is going to go after that? I'd go in the areas that are very deceptive. They look small because they're trending exponentially. So at the beginning they look very small, but they're doubling every year. So 3D printing in the next 12 months will be similar to what we've seen in the last 10 years. Right? So I think SynBio, and that's what you got to look at. If I was in Tel Aviv right now having the same discussion, and I asked how many of you are starting a startup on synthetic biology, you'd see a ton of people raise their hands. 3D printing. So I think you have a real opportunity as an entrepreneur in this community to be the first, to be on the bleeding edge and to be one of the first.
And Marcus, what I think is really important as an entrepreneur, you don't have to be the person cutting the code.
Yeah.
You are, as the co-founder, you are the CEO. You should be walking the halls of all the universities teaching science, because those kids know what the next game changer is because they're doing the research. You're the business person. You're the one that's going to raise the money, make the people, get the global connections, and get the product out the door.
You know, I hear this question a lot. You know, what is the next trend in startups or in investing? And frankly, I almost want to refuse to answer it, because I think that all of the most interesting trends in companies, no one has any idea what they are right now, or unless you're one of the people starting one of those companies. And so it really does not make sense to try to build your company based on following a trend, because, you know, A, you should be doing something that you're passionate about and that you believe in, not something that you're doing because you think it's the next hot thing. But B, if it's already successful enough to be a trend, then that means that there's already a lot of people working on it, and a lot of the, you know, the real challenges are already being solved, and you should be looking to something that no one is thinking about yet and try to break new ground. So, you know, I would advise entrepreneurs to just ignore what the trends are and to trust your passion and your intuition and your understanding of the problems that you see to guide, you know, what you want to do with your company.
Antes de seguir con las preguntas del público, estoy viendo las preguntas en Twitter, en el hashtag Meetlatam. Sigan escribiendo sus preguntas, todavía tenemos un poco de tiempo para hacerlas. Y muchas están hablando sobre la cantidad de inversionistas que hay acá en Latinoamérica. Mencionan que no serían lo suficiente y se preguntan por qué no se ven tanto inversionistas en América Latina. ¿Es un tema de desconfianza? ¿Es un tema cultural? Incluso una persona también mencionaba que estarían muy enfocados solamente en Brasil y no tanto en otros países como quizá en Chile. ¿Eso es una realidad? ¿Es solamente una visión? ¿Cuál es su opinión sobre los inversionistas en América Latina?
I can give you, coming from Chile, I think that's that view is a little bit blindsided, because there are many investors in Chile. Maybe we don't have as many VCs or large, you know, investment funds coming in, but depending on which stage you're in, you do have access to them. There's a lot of angel investors like me, which is just a private person who believes in the ecosystem, believes in entrepreneurs, believe in that the new ideas are not going to come in from us who are in our comfort zone, but from younger kids who have brighter, better, and bigger ideas and who think globally, and to be able to raise capital. And they will be able to raise on certain stages. Now, to make that jump after, to raise that $5 million, $10 million, $20 million, yes, we do lack in Latin America, but below $5 million, I believe that there's more than plenty VCs in the region. You just have to reach out to them. You know, every day we start seeing in Latin America that VCs from all over the countries are investing in different countries. Not necessarily like the VCs in Chile only investing in Chile. If you have an idea and that idea is global, you'll be able to raise money anywhere and everywhere in Latin America.
Real quick, so as you all seen previously, I'm here as a board advisor for Springboard for the last couple of years, and I've seen two barriers. One really is broadband. I have taken so many great ideas back to America, sat in San Francisco, sat in Atlanta, sat in New York, sat in Boulder, Colorado. I cannot stay connected with you long enough to show my investors, like, you got to take a look at this. This is pretty hot. They've been sitting there in isolation and built the next great thing for a consumer play.
We have a Wi-Fi problem.
You have a Wi-Fi problem. If I cannot have broadband to get connected long enough, it becomes just if I got to get on a plane and come down here and look at it, and I can't find a partner here that I know will represent us well. And the second thing is the language barrier. You know, the English is great, I need business English.
I have a little bit of a different take on this, which is that I think that a huge number of the angel investors and even the VCs in a place like Silicon Valley are former entrepreneurs who have been part of successful companies who then, you know, take their, you know, their success and they apply it to the next group of people. Either they invest in them or they start new companies, and there's this, you know, it basically just recycles back into itself. And so I think that part of it is just that it takes time to build that ecosystem. You have to have some of those, larger successes in order to fuel that next generation of entrepreneurs. And so, it definitely is something that just takes time to build up that community. So I think that if there start to be larger successes in Chile, you'll see that happen as well here.
Y quisiera preguntarle al respecto también, ¿cómo analizan el momento del emprendimiento chileno? Porque mucho se ha hablado en los últimos años de la gran cantidad de emprendedores que están surgiendo, hay muchos startups, hay muchos eventos como este Meetlatam, prácticamente todas las semanas, todos los meses tenemos. Pero quisiera preguntarles a ustedes, ¿cómo lo ven desde afuera el emprendimiento chileno? ¿Creen que es un emprendimiento de calidad? Mencionaban el problema del Wi-Fi, mencionaban otras barreras, pero realmente estamos nosotros produciendo negocios de escala global, porque realmente uno también tiene que saber quizás críticas para poder ir mejorando cada vez más. Quisiera preguntarles cómo nos ven a los emprendedores chilenos verdaderamente desde afuera.
I think they're awesome.
I think they're cautious. I think the biggest challenge they have is we have it must be a cultural thing where they want to take the next right step and realize entrepreneurship it's not taking the right step, it's always taking a step forward. And you're going to have to pivot, you're going to make mistakes, and you don't have to feel the cultural shame of being wrong. Because it's not about being wrong, it's about a different direction.
I guess I'd like to put it in perspective of, it's maybe a little bit of a narrow view, but I for whatever reason, have done a bunch of work in Australia that was never really intended. But I've been in venture in the U.S. since '91, so it's been 23 years of watching that market evolve. And 4 years ago, I started to do a little bit of experimenting in Australia for some reasons that really had nothing to do with venture capital, but I got pulled into it. And it's interesting to see the parallel in terms of a country. The landmass is a lot bigger, but it's a minerals-based economy. It's about 26 million people, so a little bit more than Chile. It's isolated. It's really, really far away. And yet there was a very small budding entrepreneur ecosystem there that as I look at the comparison 4 years ago and now, I'm seeing some amazing things. So you may or may not have heard about a company called Atlassian, but founded by a couple software guys there that never took any real money. And I don't remember their revenue, but they're over 100 million in revenue, somewhere between 100 and 200. It's about to go public. I'm guessing it's going to be worth a couple $2 billion. I don't know exactly what. And on their heels are a bunch of little startups that are thinking big. And I funded a couple, like there was a kind of a random, a really charming entrepreneur, no coding background at all, that used to run a little company making high school yearbooks. And she approached me for money. She didn't have a technical background at all, and I told her, I love your idea, but if you don't have somebody who can write the software, I'm not going to fund you. But if you find that person, I'll back you. And because I said that, she found a software person, and I wrote a check because I'm a man of my word. And she attracted somebody from Google. This is the Canvas story. And she recently hired, you may not know this person, but she recently hired Guy Kawasaki, who was Apple's original chief evangelist. And he dropped his venture job and he became a full-time employee to be their chief evangelist, because what he sees is what she's been articulating for 4 years, and it's taken her that long to get here, which is that she wants to take the market that is Adobe. And I don't know what Adobe is, probably a 20 billion market cap, I don't know. And turn it into something that's a modern kind of cloud-based version with the social element. Her vision was very clear. She has a staff now, but I'm seeing entrepreneurs like that come out of that little market that think big. And so back to the question, what do I see here? I see a lot of things that I saw in Australia maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I haven't yet seen as many people like this gal. Her name's Melanie Perkins. She was thinking very big. I mean, she as an individual with no software background wanted to take on Adobe and thought she could kick their butt. And she just believed. And somewhere in this audience, maybe you're there, but think globally, think big.
And that's what I see too. I see the difference of this country versus other countries is that you guys, like a good venture deal, you put so much money, the copper mineral tax percentages going into innovation, entrepreneurship, seed investment, venture capital to come down here and partner. There is artificial pressure to see a return on that money versus Australia. They don't put any money into these programs. These people are scrappy. They have a long-term vision. 4 years is a blink of an eye because there's no already pre-money put onto it. So it's asking Chilean monies to be patient.
Yeah, so I'm seeing, I mentioned this before, that, Santiago is, when I first got exposed to Santiago, it was some folks at Singularity University that are pretty prominent people in this space saying, yeah, it's kind of emerging as the Silicon Valley of Latin America. So there's a little bit of reputation there. I think you've got people like Barbara and Alejandra and others that, the sum is greater than the parts. So as a community, this community needs to work together to build the brand here and start rallying behind some of the leaders that are championing things here to put Santiago, on the map. If you look at in Israel, one of the big successes they've had with their startup scene there is, besides it's been good for their national defense, which always helps, but it's also, it's really a community working together to lift the whole community. And I think if you get that spirit here and you work together with certain organizations that are pushing that agenda, I think that's pretty important, especially at the stage you're in terms of the maturity level you're at right now.
Lamentablemente el tiempo pasa volando cuando uno conversa algo tan apasionante como el tema del emprendimiento. Por eso tenemos la oportunidad para una última pregunta del público. Allá tenemos.
Hi, guys. My name's Amit. We're a British team. We were funded by Startup Chile, which was fantastic. I think it's one of the great things they're doing here. We got to our product. We're an enterprise company, so B2B. It's unfashionable, unsexy, but we're getting fantastic traction because it's just an easy thing that we're doing. But what I want to echo is a statement Marcus made about the Innovation Center, getting access to enterprise clients and pilots. I don't need money, right? It's a real pain that everyone is doing incubators and everyone's pitching VCs. We had the VC, do you need money argument at the beginning. We don't need it. We just need introductions. And what's broken, I think, is the model of incentivizing those introductions. I'm happy to give stock to someone that delivers results. I don't want 50,000 because, it's not money I need. I need the introductions. That converts into revenue for me. So it's especially amplified for me because we're a B2B enterprise startup. We need access to that market. And yeah, maybe we'll break SAP and Oracle, but that's what we actually need because those guys do the deals on golf courses and things like that. So we need access to those law firm partners, those CEOs. And do you know of any other initiatives like the one you mentioned, in Singularity University, that are really for B2B, for enterprise startups? I don't know if that's...
I really appreciate your comments because I think that's the paradigm shift that you should all have. If you grow up thinking the traditional route of getting funding as VCs, that is one legitimate option. And you got better VCs like the folks up here that will actually cultivate and incubate your ideas and help you, right? They'll help you with your leadership team, your management team, et cetera. But you don't need the middleman always. You had the head of BBVA sitting on stage here. He's interested in this community. You can reach out to him. You come to these conferences, you meet him, you reach out to him, you get a meeting with him, and you say, I have something I'm working on I think that would benefit your business. What's the worst he's going to say? No, we're not interested, right? But I think you realize that big companies, and the reason I keep mentioning big companies is these are big dollars. These are 10, 15, 20, 100 billion dollar companies that are wondering how do they innovate. And they need resources, and they see a lot of the talent going out and being startups. So they realize that their own ecosystem of their employee base has to go outside of their own four walls of a company. So capitalize on that now. There's nothing wrong with you all can go and contact a CEO or a CIO of a big company. Start here locally. But I think Santiago needs to start to think about creating a hub in which you bring corporate America and Latin America corporations into a community with startups and have them coexist and work together and figure out solutions. And I think that's the model that I see us working with our clients now, and they're asking for it. They're the ones that are asking for it. I've brought startups, brand new startups with ideas into meetings of my clients, of executives of big companies, And I've had the executives say to me after the meeting, do you think they would sell to us? Can we buy them? Yeah.
So what you're all hearing here is I would not let Marcus Shingles out of the city without having him on your board of advisors.
That's actually not what, that got lost in translation.
No, it's so many times as entrepreneurs and founders, we think the smartest money, no offense guys, at the table is the money guys. No, it's your board of advisors, people that have a Rolodex. And you don't insult them with asking them to do it for free. You said, listen, I'll give you stock options over a period of time, and this is the introductions in your category, your industry, your location of the work I need done.
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say, this is not a plug for Deloitte, but go to the local firms that have relationships with executives, Deloitte or McKinsey or whoever. Pick your. I prefer Deloitte though, but go where you want to go. But we have relationships with these business executives, and we're more than happy to make those introductions because that's what they need right now. They need that.
Yeah, I mean, if I could take a little bit of liberty with your question, this is something that I've thought a lot about, which is that as it becomes more and more capital efficient to start companies, as you need less and less money to get a business off the ground, it really it puts investors in an interesting position where it may be that there are companies like yours where money isn't the primary problem. What they really need is they need some other kind of help. They need someone like Marcus, or they need...
¿Dónde españoles?
Or they need some other person, maybe a CTO or someone to help them figure out their revenue strategy or something. And I do think that the future of investing is actually beginning to invest human capital into companies in addition to just money, which is providing people and services that go beyond just a check. And I'd like to see investing move much more in that direction. And I think it's inevitable, just given that money is no longer the largest problem for a lot of businesses that are starting today.
So just to tie this back to the discussion we had on social impact, the president or the head of BBVA was here. If people start approaching him, everyone's going to have an idea. I think you have to turn social business into good business. I think that's your differentiator. So the discussion we had earlier about social impact, don't pitch it as a charitable thing or philanthropic thing. This is good business for you. If you're a branded company, you have to brand yourself. So having a social impact position on it is good business for you.
Roberto, final words?
One more thing. If you have a good idea and you believe in it, of course, you will always be able to reach the person you want to have on board. I believe what she said was create your advisory board. You don't necessarily have to bring in VCs to have good advisors. If you have a great idea and you can pitch it, you will be able to get that advisor. It is frustrating, it is hard, but that's where the successful entrepreneur differentiates from the other one. It's be perseverant, reach your goals, and get everything done. And if you have to get to that specific person, everybody can do it. It takes time, it takes sweat, and it's hard, but you can do it. And if you do that and you convince them, that's somebody else who believed in you. So that's an amazing goal. Celebrate your goals if you get that done.
One last comment from me, I guess. I wanted to pick up on Andrew's comment about the nature of how funding is changing and what comes with the money. And I've been struggling with this myself. I mean, because I've been living it, sitting on the other side of the table when companies are starting, people in this room starting companies that don't need me. So how do you add value as a money source if people don't need your money? I mean, it's actually perplexing as a venture person. And, one answer that I did come up with that might be fun for you guys to look up, as thinking about, how do you provide value, I pictured somebody like a Mark Zuckerberg sitting in a room at Harvard having to get a job with the Winklevoss twins to get money to pay for hosting. And I thought, well, how do you empower the next generation of people? And maybe he didn't get a real job. I don't know exactly what happened. But how do you empower the next set of entrepreneurs like yourselves to put your product in play, run it for free? So if you could actually provide free hosting so that there's no cost, and then build a, quote, board of advisors that helps the entrepreneur turn their product into a company. And I've actually been putting those kinds of things together for a couple years in Australia, which is how I ended up doing that thing I mentioned. In Brazil, I did a contest and ended up funding the winner, which was called forvets.com.br. But I've got a massively fun contest coming up over the next year. I teamed up with Richard Branson. I've got a team of judges. So it's Richard Branson, Lars Rasmussen, who invented Google Maps, the president of Samsung, the CEO of CES, and myself. And if you guys enter this contest, it's called the Extreme Tech Challenge. The 10 finalists will get to present on stage, on the main stage at CES, in front of, there's 140,000 attendees at CES. And if you are one of the finalists, you get free hosting. But if you're one of the 3 finalists, you get unlimited free hosting from Rackspace. Amazon and IBM are kicking things in. And then you get access to distribution, 400 million smartphones through Samsung. But there are services, there are ways that you can put companies in play to give them fuel, no cost structure, and great advisors. And so look up the contest.
Well, that's kudos to you because you're innovating your own field. You're innovating the VC field because you see that value proposition changing.
Because I have to.
Because you have
or
to.
Otherwise I'm dead.
It's called preservation.
Bueno, lo que todos esperamos es que sin duda, después de esta entretenida conversación y esta hora que hemos hablado de financiamiento y de inversiones para emprendedores, es que ustedes hayan podido aprender la mayor cantidad de conceptos y sin duda aprender de la experiencia de estas personas que conocen del tema y que han tenido la amabilidad de venir a Meetlatam para